What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're talking FPL preview for Game Week 29. So, we're going to go through some of your questions, not necessarily related to kind of free hit or Game Week 29 players in particular, in terms of who to bring in, but looking about who we might want to take out. So, Salah, is it finally time to sell? Man City fixture pile up. Then having a look at some of your questions for free hits, when to use it if you've still got it left, and then a bunch of Q&A questions at the end. So, please do give it a like if you enjoy it. Hit subscribe if you're new around here. And just one quick thing to say, I'm having to record this on Tuesday because I'm taking the day off on Wednesday because it's St. Patrick's Day in Ireland. So anything that's kind of different when I put this out, like if there's news that come in around injured players, then my apologies, but hopefully most of the content should be relevant regardless. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about Mohamed Salah. So is it time to sell? Right, he has blanked a lot between game weeks 15 to 28. And the reason that I've chosen those game weeks to look at in terms of put the stats up on the screen is because they are the weeks that people are talking about. I think he's only scored in 3 games. I think he scored 4 goals and scored in 3 games. And outside of that has blanked quite a bit. So from game week 15 to 28, not good at all. Now, there's a couple of things to think about here. And look, I'll say straight off the bat, I am probably going to keep him throughout. I'm probably not going to sell him for 29, and therefore once I do that, that's pretty much my decision made to keep him throughout. Now, that's not guaranteed. I might change my mind by the end of the week. I'm also not sitting here trying to argue either way. I'm just going to give you some things to think about, and then it's your decision to make. Right? If you want to sell him, go for it. If you want to keep him, brilliant. If you don't, that's absolutely fine too. So first of all, let's talk about the stats. So 15 to 28, like I said, is because that is when people are putting all those comments out about this is when he's blanked, etc. Right? And it's correct. Between game weeks 15 to 28, he has not been good value whatsoever. One thing to think about going forward is you've kind of got to put that to the back of your mind. You shouldn't forget about it. Are there reasons why he's blanked so much? Potentially. The loss of Henderson, for example, hasn't been great. Fabinho played a lot in the centre-back position or he was injured. It's only the last couple of games that he's been back into midfield, and we don't really know how much that's going to help because we've only seen a couple of games. One of them was against Wolves in the Premier League, and that was difficult anyway, right? That's a difficult enough fixture. They're a pretty good defence. Even if they have been kind of irrelevant for FPL this year, the defence is still good, right? And the reason I say you've kind of got to wipe it from your mind is, okay, he's not been great value, but the key question isn't has he been good value, because the answer is no, right? Anyone can tell you the answer is no. The question you should be asking yourself is, will he continue to be bad value? Now, I looked at the stats on Fantasy Football Scout for those weeks out of all players, so all midfielders, all forwards, all defenders. Expecting goal involvement for those weeks was 8.21. That was the 4th highest. His XG was 5.36. That's without penalties, I believe. That was the 4th highest as well. Big chances, he was joint first with 11. I think Gundogan was one of the others. I can't remember the other 2, but Gundogan was definitely one. And 30 shots in the box is 3rd. So from an attacking perspective, he's still got the numbers. Interestingly, I think between game weeks 1 to 14, he scored 13 goals, right? And I had a look at the numbers. I haven't got them written down here, but they were only slightly higher than these, especially for like expected goal involvement. I think it was like 10, his expected goal involvement. So it was a little bit higher, but the amount of goals he scored was ridiculous. So on a par for the season, he's probably been about right in the amount of goals he scored. It just so happens that he scored a huge chunk of them at the start and then, stopped scoring them for a while. And now it's a question of will he get back to scoring ways for the future. So one of the reasons that I'm looking to keep, and it's not like nostalgia or the fact that I think he's just so good he has to come good eventually, it's the fixtures. And that's what I've been concentrating on with big hitters all year. For my personal team, without getting into it too much, I have 2 players in midfield over 11 million, which is De Bruyne and Salah. Now, I'm not going to get into the Bruno Fernandes conversation. I can tell you right now, if I do bring Bruno Fernandes back, and there isn't it's not that I've written him off for the rest of the season, it'll probably be for De Bruyne for reasons we'll come on to in a minute. Salah's probably going to stay. You look at the teams that have got to play after game week 29, 2 of the most difficult ones are in game week 30 and 31. So there probably is an argument to be made that you could get rid of him now and then look to get back. But look at those fixtures from game week 32. He literally plays nearly every bad defence in the top 5, apart from the worst defence. Now, you're going to ask me what these are ranked based on. They are based on expected goals conceded without taking penalties into account. So non-penalty XG per game average. So the worst team is Sheffield United, then it's West Brom, then it's Leeds, then it's Burnley, then it's Palace. I can't remember who 6th was. I think it might actually be Everton. Then it's Newcastle in 7th, Southampton in 8th, and Villa in 9th. So they literally play, apart from Sheffield United and Everton, they play the worst defences in all their remaining games, apart from the Arsenal and Man United games, which are clearly difficult. Now, captaincy comes into it. I kind of get that a lot of people will be put off captaining Mo Salah at the moment. But when I see a fixture like Leeds away, bearing in mind there may or may not be a double game week in that week, if there isn't, that feels like a great fixture. Game week 33, Newcastle at home, great fixture. 36, West Brom, great fixture. Palace, last day of the season, great fixture. The flip side to that, right, the argument against is, first of all, one, yes, you can bring him in. So you could skip the next 5 game weeks and just think, well, Villa, Arsenal, and Man United are not as easy. I'll just get him in from Southampton. I'll see how Liverpool are playing. Is Jota playing well, etc. You could definitely do that. And also, we don't know what the lay of the land will be towards the end of the season. Will other players be in form? Will Liverpool be rotating because of the Champions League? Although they're not in as many competitions as Man City, they still have Champions League, and that is important. I think the big difference between Liverpool and City, which we'll talk about in a minute, is Liverpool are not going to win the Premier League, and therefore they have 2 options to get back into the Champions League. They win the Champions League or they get top 4, and I know which one is probably easier, and it's not winning the Champions League. So of course he's going to put out a strong side. I'm just not foreseeing necessarily as much rotation there. So yeah, I'm not sitting on the fence because I'm keeping Mo Salah. So that is my answer on what to do with him. But I can see the reasons to get rid. He's not great value. But when you talk about value, who is he blocking? That's what I would be asking. Who is he blocking from your team? If it's Fernandes and De Bruyne and you want them instead, absolutely fair enough. But for me, he's not really blocking any players I want. Jota keeps coming up in conversation. Should we have him instead of Mo Salah? And yeah, you could argue that Jota is better value, but if I see a Liverpool fixture and I want to captain a player, I'm always going to back Mo Salah because his stats are pretty much as good as Jota, if not actually slightly behind this year, but he always has those penalties to back them up. And therefore, I'd rather have Jota and Salah, not one or the other, right? So for me, the conversation's not... See, a lot of people say, well, I'll just get Jota instead of Salah. That's fine. Jota in his own right is a good option. But for me, I'd rather have both. And I just think those fixtures are just too good to turn down. No matter whether those defences have improved at any point, there's a reason they're down the bottom of the table and why they are some of the best fixtures to target. So that's why I'm keeping him. And I think the stats have looked fine. He just happens to have scored a lot of his goals at the start, not in the middle. I'm just hoping that he becomes a bit more balanced in terms of when he scores them. So rather than score all of them between like 30 and 33 or 36 and 38, I'm hoping he has like, one every other game or something like that. I don't know. But I'm backing him. I can see why many aren't. If you want to get rid of him, absolutely get rid. So I can't remember which video it was in last week because quite frankly, I do so many. But I touched on the fact that I wanted to captain De Bruyne in Game Week 31, but now I was a little bit put off because of the fixture pile-up and the fact that he got rested against Fulham. And I saw a great tweet from Late Riser, who's on FPL Wire. You can go and search that on YouTube. They do a podcast every single week, showing the graphic from, I think it was Match of the Day. It looked like a BBC graphic anyway, just to show how many fixtures they've got. So I said just a minute ago about Liverpool. Yes, okay, they've got Champions League to contend with, but not too many other things. Not like Man City anyway, right? So if they get through the round of 16, their second leg, which is on March 16th, they then have the FA Cup quarter-final on March 20th. So I think we know now that De Bruyne has been saved for that Champions League game because a lot of people, and I probably even said this myself, that the game is done, but it's not. It's just 2-0, right? So it actually makes a lot of sense. And the difference is Man City probably have won the league. They have ridiculous squad depth. They can afford to rotate, still win games, and have their number one players for the Champions League, which is, of course, De Bruyne, Gundogan, etc. So you've got round 16. Then it's the quarter-final of the FA Cup on March 20th. Then they do have a little bit of a break, but obviously there's international breaks, so players will be playing in that as well. Then it's Game Week 30 against Leicester, which, you could have Man City players for that or not. I don't think that's a game where I'd be massively worried if I didn't have De Bruyne. I do, so I'll probably keep him, bearing in mind or taking into account what happens in the Champions League and the FA Cup. Then it's the Champions League quarterfinal if they get through, which we're assuming they do. Then it's Leeds, and then that's sandwiched in between the other Champions League quarterfinal. So they've got 6 games between March 16th and April 13th or 14th, depending on when their fixture gets put in for the Champions League. They've got 6 games within a month, but only 2 of them are Premier League games. And I am currently eyeing up De Bruyne as a captain against Leeds. I think if everyone was to play in that game week, he is the best captain. But if he plays in that Champions League quarter-final, bearing in mind there's another one to come, and let's say they've beaten Leicester, so they've kept their lead at the top of the table, what is the chances that he plays that Leeds game? The only thing that comes to mind is it was what I don't know if Pep would think like this, but it was 1-1 in the reverse fixture, wasn't it? Man City should have done so much better, and Leeds came into it really well in the second half of the game. Will he want to get one over on Bielsa for that and play his full strength side? I don't know. He is a manager that's talked about rhythm, so it's not like he's just going to rest all his players in the easy games and just give them a game every now and again. De Bruyne could play 4 or 5 of the next 6. It's just knowing which ones they're going to be. So I think the fixtures look good for City in general, right to the end of the season, to be honest. But this much extra fixtures outside of the Premier League is a bit of a worry. And I don't think it's completely out of the question to think about reducing the amount of Man City players you have. Bearing in mind they also blank in Game Week 33. So I've actually put up here, on April 17th, they've got the FA Cup semi-final. If they get through from the quarterfinal, right? This is all potential, okay? They might get knocked out. I doubt it. You never know. But if they get to the semi-final, that will have to be rearranged. Oh, sorry, that won't be rearranged. Their Game Week 32 fixture against Villa will be rearranged, probably to the midweek, like April 20th or something like that. So again, that's another game in sandwiched in the middle. And then suddenly an EFL final game, which I'm sure he'll play a pretty good team in that. And then a few days later, it's the Everton game. So given the rotation we're seeing already, and they're continuing to play like every few days for most of the next month or so, I don't think it's out of the question to get rid of Man City players. And if I didn't already have De Bruyne, would I be thinking about getting him in? The kicker for me is that Leeds game in Game Week 33. In Game Week 31. Like if I bring up quickly the other fixtures on my other screen from that week, the other standouts really would be Liverpool against Villa. We've just talked about how much people are frustrated with Salah and looking to sell. Would you be happy captaining Jota there? Maybe. Chelsea versus Palace. I don't see many people jumping on Chelsea attackers. Kane and Bruno Fernandes play each other. It's Spurs versus Man United. And then outside of that, it's looking fairly difficult to get a decent captain, right? I look at all the other fixtures. West Ham playing Leicester, not really necessarily a good fixture for captaincy. So captaincy is not the be-all and end-all, but in that Game Week 31, I do think Man City are the standout. So I'm not sitting here telling you to offload, but I'm giving you a heads up. Based on a heads up I saw from Late Riser, obviously, and something I already mentioned last week with De Bruyne, that perhaps they can be slowly taken out of our teams. Bearing in mind they also blank in Game Week 33, and if you've got no free hit, it might not be the worst thing not to have Man City. So keep in mind that Game Week 31 Leeds fixture, who you might have for captaincy, but all these double ups and triple ups, it might be the time to start thinking about coming off, starting with potentially selling some of these players in 29 for players that are going to play in the blank. So we're talking about the free hit again, but I think what's happened this week has made the conversation very interesting and potentially getting people to think a little bit differently. So I think most people with the free hit have decided not to use it in Game Week 29, but then some people will have maybe Saka, Burn, Son, Bamford, who are now all doubts for that game week. And I don't know how many of those players are going to be completely ruled out or completely ruled fine. Like we've seen some stuff about Son today, about the fact that he might be available for the Aston Villa game, but then I think it was Alistair Gold on Twitter said that if he plays that one, then he might have to play in the international break, and Spurs would probably prefer him to completely miss out for the international break, and it might just be easier to say he's not fit by resting him for that Villa game and giving him the 3 weeks to kind of recuperate and be back. So it's difficult to know. So straight away, the free hit in Game Week 29 we weren't looking to use is potentially viable now. So, for example, with my team, I have 8 players playing in Game Week 29. But if you take out Burn, Son and Bamford, let's just say they were all injured and all ruled out, I've got 5 players. So even with 2 free transfers, I can only get to 7. It's 1 more hit for 8. It's 1 more hit for 9. And that's not necessarily the worst thing. I'll talk about hits in a minute for blank players. But with a free hit, not only could I avoid taking a -8, I could also have 11 players instead of 9, and I could also have better players, because obviously, yes, you can plan as much as you want for having players for 29, but you have to make some sacrifices. I've got Davern just because Veltman wasn't an option. I didn't have the money for Dunk. And therefore, if I free hit, I probably would go for Dunk. I'd maybe double up on Brighton defence, because that's not something that I want to keep long term. But for a free hit, I probably would go there. Aubameyang as a punt, for example, as well. Get Gareth Bale in my team, and then not have to carry him through forward if I don't want to either. So there are lots of benefits for going now for the Game Week 29 free hit, unless, of course, most of those players are ruled fit, in which case I wouldn't worry so much. The picture on screen is for the fixture amendments that were announced this week. Now, this isn't anything interesting in terms of double game weeks or blank game weeks necessarily, but they have moved some of the TV fixtures, I believe it was. The most interesting thing here is they talked about fixture amendments for TV for game weeks 30 and 31, but they didn't talk about Everton versus Villa, a fixture that's got to be rearranged that we thought might happen in 28. And then the conversation turned to maybe happening in game week 30. And unless they announce that now after, which I doubt, right? Why wouldn't they have just done it at the same time as making these announcements? It doesn't look like that fixture is going to be rearranged until after Game Week 31. So the reason that's important to the free hit is a lot of people have been holding Everton players, so Calvert-Lewin, Luca Dean, and maybe extra Villa players as well, Ghazi, Traore, Grealish, Watkins, whoever it might be, waiting for that double. But now it's probably not going to happen. Now, I can't sit here and tell you that for definite. It could still happen in 30 or 31, but it's not looking very likely. So one thing you could do with a free hit is offload your Everton Villa players, because outside of 29 for Villa and maybe 30 when they play Fulham, and Everton, to be fair, have a good Game Week 30 fixture as well, I don't know how many of those players you're going to want long term. The beauty of the free hit is you can get rid of them, and when Everton and Villa do double, you can get in as many players as you want, use your free hit, and also change your team around for whatever fixtures are looking good in the game week that it happens. That could be game week 33, but again, nothing is guaranteed. Game week 33 is probably still not a bad time to use it, because City and Spurs both blank 100% in that game week already. And if Villa and Everton got put in that, now we're talking ideal situations. You could get rid of all your Man City, all your Spurs, get in as many Villa and Everton as you want, and then not have to keep that long term. I do think the Game Week 33 use is probably reduced a little bit if you're starting to look to get rid of Man City players. You know, if Son was injured long term, or if you didn't want to hold Bale, you might only have Kane and one other, plus maybe De Bruyne or Gundogan or one or two defenders from City, whoever it might be. And then if you've not got too many in that 33 game week, then you don't need to use the free hit. The other thing to do, right, and this isn't necessarily a strategy, but it's just to wing it. The beauty, like the wild card is obviously great, but the free hit has its own kind of advantages. And one of those is you don't have to worry about using it, because, and I mean is in what week you're going to use it, because you don't have to keep that team afterwards. Those that are wildcarding in Game Week 30 or 31 now don't have the Villa versus Everton game rearranged. So they've got to think about that. They've got to think about their team for the rest of the season. They've got to worry about that blank in 33. How many Spurs, how many Man City players do they get? Yes, they get a completely new team, which is great. But with the free hit, we don't have to worry about that. We can get players in for 1 week, then not have to worry about holding them. Wildcarders, yes, they have their advantages, but it's also a disadvantage to have to kind of weigh up all those things. So one thing to do with the free hit is just wing it. Wait until these blanks and doubles are confirmed, whatever week it is, and it doesn't matter how late, because you can just pop the free hit. And if you get to the point where you can manage all these games without it, you've always got like an end of the season punt or something like that. The free hit has many advantages, but it doesn't have to be used like as soon as possible. You can just wait and wait and wait, and if it gets to the end of the season you still got it, just use it then. So just to kind of reiterate and go over again, Game Week 29 now definitely looks better than it did before, because you get rid of all those potential injured players, you save yourself big hits, and you can get 11 players out. There's a lot of plus points for that happening. Otherwise, I think you wait, if you haven't got many Everton Villa players, you wait until that's rearranged and then maybe use it that week. If you decide the fixtures are no good, then you just don't have to use it. You use it in a different week, 33, 38, whatever it might be. Let me know below when you're thinking of or let me know below when you're currently thinking of using your free hit chip. So a lot of people have asked, why are people wildcarding in Game Week 31 and not Game Week 30? And it all comes down to fixture swings, basically. So if you've built a team for Game Week 29, like lots of Leeds, lots of Spurs, lots of Villa, then Leeds, for example, have Fulham in 29, then Sheffield United at home in Game Week 30, which is great. But then after that, in 31, 32 and 33, it's Man City, Liverpool, Man United. So it's probably worthwhile keeping your Leeds players for that great Sheffield United fixture, one of the worst defences in the league, and then getting rid of them, at least some of them, before that Game Week 31 fixture swing. And then you've got the same for Spurs. So they play Newcastle in Game Week 30, really good fixture. Then they play Man United in 31. Now, you might want to keep some Spurs players on wildcard anyway, but that's one of the reasons people are doing it. Same with Villa. So if I can see Villa here, Fulham at home in 30, which is decent. Then it's Liverpool, Man City straight after that. So it's probably worth getting rid of some of them at least, if not all of them, in Game Week 31. And also some of the teams that you might want to target have poor fixtures in Game Week 30, but good ones in 31 onwards. So Leicester, for example, play Man City in Game Week 30, not great, although they did do really well in the reverse fixture. And then they have West Ham, West Brom, Palace, etc., onwards. So that's all there is to it. If you think your team will look much better if you wildcard in 30, just do it. You don't have to follow the crowd, but that is the reason most people are doing that. How many hits to take for Game Week 29? We've done this to death, I feel like, already, but if those injured players are out long term, I don't have an update on Son and Bamford, etc. at the time I'm recording this, then it depends how long term they are out. Like I spoke about the free hit. Like if Son and Bamford were back for Game Week 30 but going to miss 29, that strengthens the use of the free hit, and also it makes it less likely to want to have to use a hit to fix them. But look, if a player's not playing in Game Week 29 and you bring someone in who is, then I always look at it that they'll get at least 2 appearance points. Therefore, the hit is only a -2 because it costs you 4 points. That player's not playing, so they wouldn't have scored anything anyway. So that's a -4. The player you've brought in does play, so that's already a -2. If they get any kind of return, a clean sheet, an assist, or a goal, then that's you're already up on the deal. But the where it kind of muddies the water is how long you want to keep that player. So, for example, right, I've talked about Brighton attackers, forwards maybe, for Game Week 29. Great, they play Newcastle at home. But then it's Man United, Everton, Chelsea. So if I take a -4 to replace Bamford, to bring in more pay or Welbeck, I might get that repaid in Game Week 29. But for the next 3 game weeks, I would probably back Bamford to match, if not outscore, especially when he's got that Sheffield United game in Game Week 30. So, I mean, there isn't a fixed number. I say -4 is fine, -8 is fine, -12. It's going to depend on your team, but I would be less worried about taking hits, albeit the fixtures aren't great, and in some situations I don't see too many points coming back. But I feel like the risk is lessened a bit because players aren't playing anyway. So, as always, this comes down to long-term picks. Who are you taking out? Do you want rid of them long term? If not, it's probably not worth taking the hit. Who are you bringing in? Do you want them long term? If not, probably not worth taking the hit. That's what you need to think about. Best goalkeeper for the rest of the season. I mean, Leeds fixtures outside of those Man City, Liverpool, Man United games aren't that bad. So you could go Meslier. I quite like Chelsea. Going for Mendy. So West Brom, Palace, Brighton, West Ham, Fulham. Towards the end of the season, it does get a bit more difficult. So Man City, Arsenal, Leicester, Villa. But there's still potentially some clean sheets there. Martinez, I do think if you're wildcard in 30 or 31, you could get rid of him. He does have some good fixtures. So Fulham, West Brom, Everton's okay, Crystal Palace. But outside of that, it's City, Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea, Spurs. Villa could get results there. But I would just back against him. I know it's a big call, but the fixtures are there to go against him, right? So I'd probably be looking at Mendy for Chelsea. You could go for Leno at Arsenal, for example. They've got some pretty good fixtures too. Or I wouldn't probably go for Patricia at Wolves. Just not even. Obviously, he got injured as well. Hopefully, he's okay. But I just think for Wolves, an outfield defender is probably better than the keeper in that situation. Whereas for Arsenal, perhaps Leno is just the best option to go for. And yeah, latest on Son or Bamford, I don't have anything. I'm sorry to say right now. Bamford, if it looked like an impact injury that he couldn't run off, the fact that he tried to run it off makes me kind of optimistic that he will play in Game Week 29, but we'll have to see what Bielsa says. Remembering that Bielsa ruled Stroik out of Game Week 28, and then he played, which was interesting. And Son, Mourinho has basically said, let me find the things here. Yeah, I can't get the exact quote here, but he said something like he's looking good. So let me see. So from Football London, Alistair Gold, at least some positive news after that woeful weekend for Spurs. Understand that Son's injury is not as bad as first feared. Could be back for the Newcastle match. That would be after the international break. And potentially even for this Sunday's Villa game. But he goes on to say there's an interesting dynamic in South Korea have a friendly match in Japan next week. In an ideal world, Spurs wouldn't want Son to play in that. But obviously, if he plays against Villa, that's less likely to happen. So maybe they'll rest him. Maybe they'll just play him and then Mourinho will say the injury flared up and he can't go. I don't know. But that looks a bit maybe dodgy on Son. But hopefully, Mourinho will give us some better news in the press conferences. I'm hopeful that at least one of these players will be fine. I got a feeling it will be Bamford, but we're going to have to wait for the press conferences to see. There we go. That is it for this one. Please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you have enjoyed it. As I said at the start, I have recorded this on Tuesday, so hopefully there's not too much big news that impacts what I've had to say as it goes out on Wednesday. Obviously, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody in Ireland. And obviously, with Mo Salah, let me know in the comments below, what are you doing with him? Have you just got to the end of your tether with him? You're super frustrated. He has to go. If he is, or if you feel like that, who are you bringing him in for? Let me know in those comment sections below. One last thing, patreon.com/letstalkfpl. If you haven't already signed up, there's a link in the description below. Everyone that signs up goes up on the Legends wall. So thank you to everyone that already has. And if you want to check out the perks and benefits, there is a link in the description below to see the rest. I will leave it there. Team selection will be out tomorrow on Thursday. Captaincy on Friday. Deadline stream on Friday as well. Probably an extra long one as well like last week. So I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for watching. Hit that like button. Hit subscribe. And I'll see you again soon.